The day we buried her father, she clung to my arm like a child, her mascara running down my coat sleeve. I held her because grief, I thought, levels us all. But by the end of the week, her hugs turned into hisses. She watched me like I might betray the grave if I so much as smiled. "You're not thinking of dating again," she said barely a month later, a wine glass dangling from her hand like judgment. I was. Not out of desperation, but defiance. Of loneliness, of fading into silence before my own time. I was 59, not dead. And I wanted something soft again. Something warm to hold that didn't carry memories like scars. But to her, every dinner I accepted, every hand I held, was a betrayal. Not of her father, but of her. If you've ever been punished for choosing joy over mourning, like, share and subscribe. Because some daughters don't want you to be lonely, they want you to stay small. She sabotaged the first man with lies. Told him I wasn't ready. The second, she interrogated over brunch, picking at his flaws like she was carving a warning into him. By the third, men stopped calling back altogether. I didn't confront her. Not then. I waited, because I knew what she feared wasn't my happiness. It was her place in my heart being eclipsed by someone she couldn't control. And so, when I met David, smart, cultured, 10 years my junior, I didn't post about him. Didn't bring him to dinner. I kept him tucked in a corner of my life she couldn't reach. Until one day, she called and said breathlessly, "I met someone. You'll love him." His name? David. She thought she found a man to escape her bitterness. What she didn't know was, she'd walked straight into the arms of the man who already knew every part of me. She was glowing when she talked about him. My daughter, the same woman who'd spat words like embarrassment and midlife crisis when I dared to date again. Now she was laughing like someone had handed her permission to feel. "I met him at a gallery opening," she gushed. "He's so mature. Finally, someone who doesn't talk about crypto and CrossFit." I asked her name again. "David," she said. I swallowed a smile. Not out of jealousy, but justice. David wasn't mine by marriage. He wasn't mine by title. But we had been seeing each other for nearly 5 months. Quietly. Tenderly. Enough time for him to see the real me. Not the grieving widow, not the shrinking mother, but the woman who still had fire left. She thought she'd found someone who could replace her father's echo. But what she found was someone who already knew the shape of her mother's survival. I didn't tell David right away. I wanted to see how far she'd take it. I wanted to see what she looked like when she thought she was in control of something she never owned. She invited me to meet him. A wine bar, Camelot, smug. I played along. David arrived late, apologetic as always. He froze the moment he saw me. I raised my glass in greeting. He nearly dropped his coat. "David," I said, warm and even. "So lovely to see you again." My daughter turned pale. Confused. "You two know each other?" David cleared his throat, glanced at me, then her, then back again. "Yes," I said. "Intimately." The silence after my intimately was thick enough to chew. David stared into his wine glass like it held answers. My daughter? She looked like she'd swallowed broken glass and was trying not to bleed. "How do you know each other?" she asked again, but her voice was sharper now, tight around the edges. I leaned back in my chair, slow and composed. "We met at a book signing. He was interested in Baldwin. I was interested in quiet conversation. We've been seeing each other for a while now." David tried to speak, but I lifted my hand, not in cruelty, but in calm control. "I didn't tell you, because every man I've ever dated since your father passed, you've turned into a battlefield." Her eyes brimmed with disbelief, then fury. "You let me fall for him." "No," I said. "You chose to. Just like you chose to sabotage the last 3 I met. You never wanted me happy, you wanted me obedient, alone. Children don't always want their parents to suffer. But some of them, when hurt or afraid, want their parents frozen in time, grieving, dependent, harmless. David finally spoke. I didn't know she was your daughter when we met. And when I did, I panicked. I thought if I ended it, I'd hurt one of you. If I stayed, I'd hurt the other. And now it was too late. She stood abruptly, chair legs screeching. You're disgusting, she snapped. Both of you. She stormed out. David watched her go, then looked at me, devastated. I didn't mean for this, he said. I know, I replied. But maybe now she'll finally stop trying to control what she never cared to understand. The days after that dinner were quiet. No calls.
No texts.
No snide comments about my outfits or age. She disappeared like she expected me to chase her, to beg forgiveness for a truth she created with her own hands.
But I didn't chase.
I grieved, yes, but not for her. I grieved for the years I'd spent folding myself small to make her feel secure. Some daughters don't want mothers. They want shadows. Anything else feels like competition. David stopped calling too. I understood. He was a man caught between truth and guilt, and neither made good company. I didn't blame him. He didn't betray me. He just couldn't survive the fallout. But I could, because I'd already survived burying a husband. I'd already rebuilt a life from grief once, and I knew I could do it again without approval. Weeks passed. I went back to my yoga class. I traveled alone for the first time in years. I sat at cafes with no need to explain myself to anyone who saw the lines on my face and assumed I was waiting for grandchildren instead of fresh beginnings. And my daughter? She finally emailed.
Cold.
Formal. I think we both know things can't go back to how they were. But I hope one day you understand why I reacted the way I did. I didn't reply, because I did understand. She thought her father's death meant I would stay frozen in time, that my happiness would remain in her control, that I wouldn't dare move forward without her permission. But I didn't need permission. The final message came 6 months later. A text this time.
Short. Vague.
Can we talk? I read it once, then set the phone down. Not out of cruelty, but out of wisdom. Because I'd spent too long chasing the version of her I thought still loved me as a mother, not the one who needed me as a statue of loyalty, frozen beside her father's memory. She had called my happiness a betrayal. She had called my joy disrespect. And when she fell in love with the man who loved me, she blamed me for her heartbreak. Some daughters never leave childhood. They simply grow older in the shell of it and expect their parents to do the same.
I didn't respond.
Instead, I pulled out my journal, the one I'd started the day I first let David into my life. I flipped through pages of quiet moments, laughter, shared meals, hikes, kisses. Every memory built not in shame, but in healing. None of it deserved to be erased by her resentment. I put the phone away. Not silenced.
Closed.
David and I hadn't spoken in months. Maybe we never would again. Maybe the story had ended not in betrayal, but in the cost of someone else's possession. Still, I didn't regret it, because I'd finally learned the difference between love and guilt. And she'd learned what happens when you weaponize grief against someone who's already survived the fire. Thank you for standing through the storm with me. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories where silence becomes strength and betrayal becomes the last gift they ever give us.